All right, everyone. Good morning. I'm very delighted that you're all joining us this morning to talk about the current events in the region. Today, we're going to be capturing the view from Lebanon. This is part of the Bobst-AUB collaborative initiative. This partnership with the American University of Beirut, as you know, includes many different facets, including research support, faculty exchanges, webinars, conferences, joint workshops. If you'd like to learn more about the Bobst-AUB collaborative initiative, please go to our websites, either at Princeton or at the AUB to learn more. Bobst Princeton American University of Beirut collaborative initiative. Today, I am joined by my esteemed and thoughtful and expert panelists and colleagues. I'm really delighted to be moderating this session with my colleague from the American University of Beirut, Tanya Haddad. I want to say a word about the series, Conversations from Beirut. A couple of years ago, we decided that there's no shortage of events happening in Lebanon. And what happens in Lebanon is often very consequential for the rest of the region. And given that we have some of the best experts at the American University of Beirut capturing events not only in Lebanon, but in the Middle East, that we want to host this series at least once in a semester to capture what is going on in Lebanon on the ground, listening to our expert opinions, listening to expert opinions and our colleagues also on the Princeton end who are experts on the subject matter. And with that, today I am delighted to be joined by Deborah Amos and Ohannes Geukjian, our colleagues from the American University of Beirut, and Deborah Amos is at Princeton University. Just to say a word, brief bio of each of them. Deborah Amos is a longtime international correspondent. Amos spent much of her award-winning career at NPR. Her reporting on the Middle East and refugees in the US regularly featured on NPR's Morning Edition, Weekend Edition, and All Things Considered. She recently covered the Syrian and Iraqi refugee crises, the economy of the Middle East, and the Arab youth surge. Previously, she reported for ABC's Nightline and PBS's Frontline, and Amos is the author of two books, Eclipse of the Sunnis, Power, Exile, and Upheaval in the Middle East, and Lines in the Sand, Desert Storm, and the Remaking of the Arab World. She has won several major journalism honors, including a Courage in Journalism Award from the International Women's Media Foundation, a George Foster Peabody Award, and an Edward R. Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award, and an Emmy. Thank you so much, Deb, for joining us. It's a great honor to have you.
Great to be here.
From the American University of Beirut, my colleague and good friend and longtime collaborator, Ohannes Geukjian, he's one of the first colleagues that we interacted with and strategized to build out the Bobst-AUB collaborative initiative in the political science department in the Arts and Science College. For that, I'm very grateful, Ohannes. But Ohannes pursued his undergraduate and graduate studies at AUB and received a BA in political science in 1984 and an MA in international relations in 1989, after which he pursued his postgraduate study at Bradford University in the United Kingdom and was awarded a PhD in peace studies in 2005. He joined the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at AUB as a full-time lecturer in 2012, a full-time assistant professor in 2016, and in June 2022, he was promoted to associate professor with tenure. His recent book, The Russia Military Intervention in Syria, was published in 2022 by McGill's Queen's University Press. Congratulations, Ohannes, on the book. And I'm so delighted that you're joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And my colleague and good friend, Tanya Haddad, is joining me as moderator today. Tanya Haddad is an associate professor for public administration and the director of the Global Engagement Initiative at the American University of Beirut. She is a leading scholar on civil society and volunteering in the Arab world. Her research focuses on civil society and gender issues, social justice, nonprofit management, volunteering, disaster management, and government. Her research has appeared in many academic journals, including the International Journal of Voluntary and Nonprofit Organizations, Nonprofit Policy Forum, and the Journal of Nonprofit Education and Leadership. She recently published a book on the Beirut explosion titled International and Local Actors in Disaster Response, responding to the Beirut explosion. And Tanya has participated and hosted many Bobst-AUB collaborative initiative events. Tanya, it's a great honor to have you moderate with us today.
Thank you, Amani.
Excellent. And I want to thank my colleagues, Lara Kechichian and Christy Jovantis. They are the program managers at the AUB side and at the Princeton University side. Without them, none of this would be possible. They always work tirelessly behind the scenes. So I'm grateful for all your efforts. And I want to thank all of you, our esteemed guests, for joining us. So with that, I will kick off the first question. Ohannes and Deb, what we've decided is that Tanya and I will pose questions. Deb and Ohannes, you will chime in. We'll alternate who goes first. But I'm going to kick off the question. The question that has been on a lot of our minds, given the conflict in the region and what is happening, and we're hearing about a pending ceasefire. We all hope for a pending ceasefire before Ramadan. But the worry that many have had is that Hezbollah was going to get involved in this war, that it was going to enhance its escalation with Israel. And lo and behold, we would have not only the Israel-Gaza conflict, that the conflict would extend to Lebanon. And I know that there are ongoing skirmishes on the border, but more or less everybody agrees that the conflict has been contained. Can we, if for some reason, and I don't want to be a pessimist and I don't want to be an alarmist, but if for some reason the ceasefire breaks down and now we're in the middle of Ramadan, do you all see a breaking point or a tilting point where Hezbollah and Lebanon, or quote unquote, will be drawn in, or Hezbollah and Lebanon will draw Israel into a northern, a more substantial northern conflict?
I think I think that it's not ladies first in this one. It's the guy in Beirut. So please start.
All right, thank you. Although all parties that are involved in fighting, escalation, negative rhetoric, discourse, no one wants to escalate this conflict and go to a regional war. However, we cannot rule out the possibility of war. I am neither pessimistic nor optimistic, but there is a lot of uncertainty given the fact that yesterday Israel actually hit Baalbek in the Bekaa, and this was a very dangerous escalation from the Israeli side. A day ago, Israel hit Sidon, the coastal city in the south. So what has been called the rules of engagement, I think no party is respecting them. And what I would like to emphasize is that things may go out of control, and although Iran, Lebanon, Hezbollah, Israel, the United States, without ignoring the US position, although all of them are not in favor of escalation and not in favor of a regional war, but as I said, things may go out of control, and nobody knows and nobody can predict whether a very dangerous escalation could occur or not. I mean, so far, there are losses on both sides. In the south, Israel has been attacking 100 villages. There is more than, or approximately 100,000 displaced. On the Israeli side, there is also, according to media reports, 85,000 or 90,000 displaced. So displaced people on both sides. Israel is systematically destroying the houses, the buildings, the infrastructure in the south. The Lebanese press is not focusing on this issue. What we hear from the press in Lebanon is about Israeli attacks on the south, but detailed actually reports on the damage is missing. Yet there are some reports that are much in detail actually. So destruction is huge. I mean, so far the cost on Lebanon, if fighting stops now, the cost is already more than 1 billion. And given the Lebanese financial and economic crisis and political crisis, let's not ignore it, Lebanon cannot actually cannot sustain, and Lebanon cannot deal with such huge cost in the near future. So I would say, as Amani, I mean, to provide a short and clear answer to your question, I would say nobody can predict. Nobody can predict. Let's hope that there is de-escalation, although there are talks about a ceasefire before Ramadan, but these are talks, these are ideas. There is no real intention and willingness to reach such an agreement, so things remain uncertain. This is my overall actually assessment of the situation so far.
So today there is a news story that says the Israeli defense minister said that even if there is a ceasefire, that Israel will continue and expand its attacks on Lebanon. So the Israelis want to continue. I agree with Ohannes in this notion that, you know, somebody can go too far. The activity in the past couple of days has been a bit alarming. To hit in the Bekaa 100 kilometers from the Israeli border is unusual. Hezbollah has also demonstrated that they can evade the Iron Dome, which is the Israeli protection against missiles, and they didn't kill anybody, but it seemed to me that it was a demonstration project that if we wanted to, we could. You know, the issue that is outstanding, and I don't see how this gets resolved, is the Israelis demand that Hezbollah moves back north of the Litani River. This was, you know, part of the diplomatic arrangement the last time there was a war between the two. Hezbollah says, we're not going to talk about that until the Israelis are out of Gaza. You know, at the same time, Lebanon doesn't have a government. There's a whole nother set of negotiations to try to figure out who the president's going to be. So it's really hard to see how you can work on diplomacy, which is a way you could settle this, because who are you going to talk to? The president of Lebanon, they don't have one. And the other thing that has been on my mind is, you know, the Lebanese, certainly the private health sector has collapsed. Nobody can afford it anymore. So everybody is in, you know, the government-run health centers, not the best for wartime dealing with injuries from bombings. At the same time, I've read that the government doesn't really have any earth-moving equipment in case houses collapse, as we've seen in Gaza. I don't know a time that I can think of that Lebanon is less prepared for, you know, for increasing this war. But I also worry that there are so many factors from both sides that could slip into, we can't let this stand, we must go further. We aren't there yet. It's kind of a game of chicken between the two sides. But, you know, those games are dangerous. And so I think you can't predict with certainty that there will not be a war in Lebanon. You just cannot.
If I can just follow up, Tanya, before I hand it off to you on this issue, would just, again, in the worst case scenario, would a war in Lebanon be about containing Hezbollah or drawing Iran into a larger regional conflict?
Shall I go? Or Deb starts first?
No, you go ahead, because I'm in Berlin and you are on the ground.
Iran doesn't want a war. I don't know if there is time to comment on the internal situation in Iran. Iran has made a long strategy fighting Israel by proxy. And this is what is happening. So irrespective of, the support, oral support, rhetoric, discourse by the Iranian side. But if you read in detail what Iran has been doing, it's very clear. Iran does not want a regional war. Secondly, Iran does not want to sacrifice Hezbollah at the same time. It is the strongest proxy in the region, and therefore it has been using Hezbollah. It has been training, financing, politically backing, diplomatically backing, and providing arms for Hezbollah since 1982. So Hezbollah has become the strongest proxy, and therefore Iran doesn't want to take the risk because let's be realistic. If war breaks, full-scale war breaks, and it becomes against Hezbollah, war against Hezbollah at the same time means war against Lebanon and destroying Lebanon. We cannot differentiate in this context between Hezbollah and Lebanon. Who is Hezbollah? Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese people. Therefore, it's everywhere. It's not only in the south. It's in the southern suburb. If Israel is going to attack and actually hit the infrastructure and the buildings in the southern suburb of Beirut, where Hezbollah headquarters are there primarily, then the capital will be destroyed. Therefore, in this case, the war will be against Lebanon, although in Hezbollah's parlance and in Israelis parlance and Israeli rhetoric, the focus is on destroying Hezbollah. I fully agree with Deb, as she said a while ago, that Netanyahu and his extreme right government has been repeating continuously that irrespective of what happens in Gaza, they will go and attack Hezbollah, particularly if diplomacy fails. They are in favor of war and escalation. And this option is, by the way, on the table. We cannot ignore it.
Well, even if diplomacy doesn't fail, it was pretty clear what the defense minister said. If there's a ceasefire in Gaza, that will not stop us from hitting Hezbollah. I read a piece in The Atlantic by Nick Blanford, and he's been reporting from the region forever. So he gets more details than most. And one caught my eye, and it was this. Hezbollah is having trouble with some of their units in the south, hotheads who don't stop when they're told to, who want to go further. And so what he reports is that Hezbollah has made those units smaller and sent some old guy down there, some grandpa, to say, hold on, young men, this is not what we're doing. This is not the orders from the top. And, if you lose control of people on the border, that's where trouble starts. That's where errant missiles hit a house full of kids, or and that then raises the stakes. Now, at the moment, northern Israel has evacuated. There's a lot of people who want to go back, but you have to reach further in to get to homes with human beings in them. But that can happen. And I really focused on that tiny little detail to think, yeah, that's how it happens. Somebody is not following orders on either side. Somebody's not following orders. We've certainly seen in Gaza the discipline of Israeli soldiers break down. So it's not out of the question that, you don't have a grandpa on the Israeli side to say, knock it off. You do on the Hezbollah side, and let's hope that that works. But there's all kinds of human beings that are involved in this, and somebody can take a wrong step. That's the problem. I wanted to ask Ohannes a question about a report I saw about a hack at the airport. There was somebody hacked in to the arrival and departure screens with a message to Hassan Nasrallah to say, if you start this war, you will not get any support in Lebanon. And I just wondered, was that a big news story in Lebanon? And does it reflect how Lebanese are feeling about the situation they find themselves in.
All right. There is no consensus in Lebanon. All the Lebanese express sympathy and solidarity with the Palestinians. All of them are against war. But when it comes to Hezbollah and making the decision of war, certainly the Lebanese are divided. Some parties criticize Hezbollah. They express actually opposition to what has been happening, because the decision of war and peace should be taken by the state. And as long as the state is weak and unable to control its borders and territory, and Hezbollah has been making such decisions, therefore, there is a deep disagreement in Lebanon, although this is not, this is not brought actually to the media in detail, but from time to time, actually, particularly the Christian parties. But let me tell you something, Deb. I have been talking to residents, who visit Beirut and who are living in Beirut, but their houses are in the south, and they have displaced from the south. To be frank, and this is not also reflected in the media, there is a big number of Lebanese who have the residents in southern Lebanon, who have been living in southern Lebanon, but now they are displaced. They express themselves actually, although sporadically, not all the way, but they are also criticizing what has been happening in the south. Although they are unable to reveal their feelings and expressions actually to the media and talk loudly, but when you meet people and try to ask them, have a conversation with them in a in a closed room, let's say, behind the doors, right? Certainly they are critical. Therefore, there is part of the Shia community in Lebanon that doesn't agree in this agreement. But this is not revealed in the press.
Indeed.
And with that, so Tanya, I'm going to, we've gotten through one of our questions. This is great conversation discussion, and thank you for the insight. So Tanya, floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amani. Actually, I want to pick up where Ohannes and Deb were discussing, especially given the weakness of the state, the healthcare center, that is the healthcare collapsing, the economic crisis, Hezbollah not willing to discuss the UN Resolution 1701 before the cessation of the hostility in Gaza. My question for you is, what would be the cost of a full-scale war between Hezbollah and Israel?
The question is to whom?
Both of you. Yeah. You want to start on it?
I say the guy on the ground gets first shot.
Okay. Tanya, the cost will be very, very big. As I said a while ago, so far the cost has exceeded 1 billion. Certainly it will be much bigger compared to the destruction of the infrastructure and the buildings and committed in 2006. So, it is very difficult to give estimates here. In billions of dollars, but certainly it will be very big. And we should not forget that in 2006 there was and the Arab world backing Lebanon. The Gulf countries actually provided money, and so that Lebanon was rebuilt and its infrastructure was rebuilt. Today, if such escalation happens, the Gulf is not ready to pay 1 penny. 1 penny. And the Gulf countries have made this very clear. Given Hezbollah's political position towards the Gulf countries and being supported by Iran, So the Gulf country is not in a position. Gulf countries are not in a position to provide money if actually war happens and destruction happens at such a big scale. I mean, so this is the big question that, and probably because of that, Hezbollah has been very cautious. I mean, Hezbollah doesn't want to escalate. Let us be very clear. Hezbollah doesn't want full-scale war. This is very clear. Hassan Nasrallah has said it a number of times. Israel also have said it a number of times. I should add to Tanya's, question. Israel is also worried about the scale of destruction if war escalates this time. Let's shed light on the Israeli side also, because Hezbollah is able to hurt Israel more than it had done in 2006 with its precision missiles. That are able to hit Israeli targets precisely and reach further distances by bringing more destruction and certainly increasing the cost of escalation. So both parties here don't want to escalate, neither Hezbollah nor Israel. I don't know if Deb agrees with me. I think the Israeli, rhetoric and discourse, the aim has been to shape the ongoing negotiations in Qatar and in Paris and elsewhere. Thank you.
I definitely agree. That part, and that statement from the Israeli defense minister today was part of that. The rhetoric that comes back from Hamas out of Beirut is, oh, those leaks from Paris don't mean anything. Everybody is playing this game of, pressure. The problem I see is between Israel and Hezbollah is that they're playing this game with real rockets. Hezbollah has not revealed itself. Everything they've used so far is small and with shorter distances. But anybody in the Israeli military knows exactly what Hezbollah has. And it's certainly, I was in Damascus in 2006 and got to Beirut afterwards, and the destruction was profound. Bridges gone, roadways gone. And so we kind of know what it looks like, but it will be worse next time. Now, I wonder, so a few weeks ago at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, I was able to interview Lebanon's foreign minister. It was an on-the-record event. And I asked him at the time, I said, can you, as a member of the government, in any way talk to Hezbollah? Can you veto their decisions? And I was so surprised by his answer, which was he put his hands up like this and went, no, 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 no. And there was a nervous laughter in the room because he was so revealing in his body language and how he had to talk about it. And so, I think, all right, if it happens, if people spill over the whatever the red lines are, and I don't think we know on either side what the red lines are, it is on Hezbollah's shoulders. If there is an escalation, they will be held responsible in Lebanon, it seems to me, for that kind of destruction. So I do see why, I'll go back to that hack. It's not showing up in the papers. The debates aren't showing up in mainstream media, but there are indications that people are thinking about it and just saying to Hezbollah, you will not have any support if you do this. This is on your shoulders. We don't have a government. You're the decision maker, so beware of that. And it seems to me that Lebanon has been through so much at this point that they cannot take another conflict.
So thank you. This is a great segue, Deb and Ohannes, into my next question, which is really capturing the dynamic perspective from within Lebanon between the different groups. I know we talked a little bit about Hezbollah, about the Christians. I'm more curious to hear more about, if I may say, the Sunni position on all of this, but also the interim foreign minister just rejected Israel's demands for Hezbollah to withdraw north of the Litani line. Is he speaking for the Lebanese government? And we know, we're not entirely sure, with all due respect, what that is right now. Is he speaking for other segments of the Lebanese population that have support for Hezbollah that extend beyond the Shia? And I know, Ohannes, you talked about variation even within the Shia population. And what role will the Lebanese army play in all of this? Is there some competition in the south between the Lebanese army and, let's say, Hezbollah, or is there more collusion, for example?
The Lebanese army in the south is a bystander, doing nothing, watching. It's not participating in the fighting. Hezbollah is fighting, and there are other factions actually from time to time. They are participating in the fighting, but the main party involved in fighting is Hezbollah. Now, concerning the position of the foreign minister, I think there is. It's not that I think, but there is collaboration between Hezbollah and the caretaking government. The caretaking, the Prime Minister Najib Mikati, the Speaker of the House Nabih Berri, and Foreign Minister Bouhabib are the three persons who are contacting, who are engaged in the discussions with Western delegations that have been visiting Lebanon, and they have conveying the position of the Lebanese government. Let me tell you the position of the Lebanese government, which is, I think, the position of Hezbollah at the same time. That's why I said they are collaborating. So the position of the Lebanese government is the following. The Lebanese government is in favor and supports the implementation of Resolution 1701. Hezbollah is saying the same thing, implementation of Resolution 1701, but the Lebanese government is saying the position is clear.
Ohannes, can you, for our audience, just say a few bullets about Resolution 1701, please?
Yes, 1701, the Resolution 1701 in 2006 by the UN Security Council ended actually the war between Hezbollah and Israel. And the provisions of 1701 actually invited both parties, requested both parties to withdraw, to provide the space for the Lebanese armed forces deploy in the south, and part of the provisions are clear concerning the UNIFIL, okay? But what is important here, Amani, the international community at that time wanted to help the state of Lebanon so that the Lebanese armed forces are deployed in the south, 15,000 soldiers, to control the border area completely, and with the help of UNIFIL. And it says clearly no illegal armed actually existence other than the Lebanese armed forces in that area, on the border area, South Litani, whatever. Unfortunately, Resolution 1701 was not implemented by both parties, Israel and Lebanon. Let us be very clear. Neither the Lebanese side implemented it, nor the Israeli side implemented it. Had it been implemented, we could have avoided what we are seeing now in the border. So back to the Lebanese armed forces, they are bystanders. So the position of the Lebanese government is the following. Full implementation of Resolution 1701, withdrawal, which means withdrawal of Israel from the Shub'a Farms and Kfar Shuba Hills, and addressing the 13 points that are still actually a matter of disagreement on the border. The border is delimited and delineated, demarcated and delineated back in 1949, according to the Armistice Agreement. The border is actually demarcated, but there are 13 points that are still contested between Israel and Lebanon. So the Lebanese government is saying full implementation of Resolution 1701, agreement on the final 13 points that are still contested between us, including the B1, okay? And withdrawal of Israeli actually troops from the Shib'a Farms and the Kfar Shuba Hills. Then there will be no excuse for Israel to actually escalate, and no excuse for Israel not to withdraw from the south.
Let me put in one detail about the Lebanese army. There was a time where it was a good job. You know, you could raise a family, and that's why people joined. Somewhere around $1,000 a month, but the currency collapse means that many of these soldiers are making $60 a month, and you cannot feed a family on that money. So they're all out driving Uber cabs at night. Now, that is not a recipe for an army that is primed to take over security in the South. You know, to fix that takes two things: time and money. You know, the U.S. has been supportive of the Lebanese army. They have sent, you know, a lot, but it's going to take even more. So it's hard to imagine how the Lebanese army is even close to being ready to take over what is a perilous assignment in the South, and especially at this moment. So I think that thinking that the Lebanese army is going to go to the South is just not in the cards. It's just impossible to imagine it. So that's a rather big mountain to climb to sort this out.
Can I add one more thing, Amani, if you allow?
Yes.
Back to the position. Well, you have asked Deb, you have asked the foreign minister, I mean, about it. But back to the to what the foreign minister, there was a long interview in the Sharq al-Awsat newspaper with the foreign minister a few days ago. He says that in order to deploy Lebanese armed forces to the south, we need to recruit, which means we don't have money. I fully agree with you. We will do it. We will do it if foreign countries help us to do it, to recruit, and in addition, to arm provide weapons to the Lebanese army, not only recruitment. So money, we absolutely, I agree with you. Money and arms and support. Then the Lebanese army would be able to deploy around 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers to the south in order to control the border. I think this is, I mean, an excuse that, not excuse, but this is, I mean, a difficulty that the Lebanese government cannot overcome. With no money, actually no weapons, appropriate weapons. And in addition, there is one thing that we should not ignore, and probably Deb agrees with me. Let me raise it. It is not raised in the talks and in the going exchange of ideas. Israel does not recognize the Shib'a farms as Lebanese. Israel recognized it as being Syrian. From 1946 until 1967, the Shib'a farms have been under Syrian sovereignty. And in the 1967 war, Israel occupied it with the Golan Heights. Now, for a long time, Syria has been manipulating the Lebanese government, particularly after 2005, sometimes acknowledging that it is Lebanese, other times denying that it is Lebanese. By the way, the Syrian president has told Frederick Hoff that the Shib'a farm does not belong to Lebanon. And that's one thing. The other thing is that Israel does not recognize the Sheba farms being Lebanese. So what are we talking about here? The Lebanese government has been asking Syria for a number of times, for long years, give us a written document acknowledging the Lebanese identity of the farm so that we take it to the UN and register it there, and accordingly we negotiate. The Syrian government so far has been denying, actually, or refraining from giving the Lebanese authorities such a written document. So this is an additional problem that nobody is talking about, which should be addressed at the same time.
Thank you.
I
for
don't
that.
know, you know, it was brought up, I just saw a detail from reporting from the Munich Security Council a few weeks ago, and on the sidelines, apparently, there was a Turkish diplomat talking to whoever would listen that Syria has to be brought into this political process. I know who he talked to. He talked to the EU's foreign affairs chief, Joseph Borrell. And the fact that it was reported was interesting to me, really. And the fact that the Turks wanted that to happen was also interesting. So I read that to mean that maybe there's the push in some capitals to bring Syria into this discussion. If they are the original owners of Sheba farms, they would have to get into this conversation. So that had happened in Munich makes sense. That's when everybody gets together. And that somebody thought it was important enough to report is also interesting for those of us who watch for those little morsels coming out of those kind of events.
So, and this is really interesting. And I guess before I transition over to Tanya, and we'll try to for the wrap up question and open up to questions, is that, but what I hear from both of you on whether it's the Sheba farms, whether it's Hezbollah in the south, the Litani border, Lebanon is a state in the midst of state collapse. Once a state does not have the monopoly of authority to rule a country, meaning a military, it is not a state. So what the bigger worry is that Lebanon is going to be asked by the international order to account whether it's on these negotiations, and we don't really have a state in the making or a state in place to do that. And so that's where it can be extremely consequential, especially to Deb and Ohannes' points. Anybody in the South can act unilaterally and then plausibly draw Lebanon into this conflict. Tanya, I'm going to transition to you with.
Yeah. My last question. Thank you, Amani. Actually, this is my last question, and then we will start taking the Q&A from the audience. So to Ohannes and Deb, so amidst of the state collapse, the dispute over the Sheba farm, the 1701 resolution, how does this all end? How do you see it ending?
This will end
In 30 seconds, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you have two options. No third option. One, after either the implementation of 1701 with new arrangements or going to war.
Eesh. No good choices. Here's my 30 seconds. I have no idea. We haven't seen anything good lately. And I think that Ramadan will give us more clarity than we have at this moment. Everybody is posturing. There's no doubt about that. Ohannes, I completely agree with you about that. And I think we're in this very murky moment of, let's see Monday, did they get the ceasefire? What does that mean? Who are they going to release? What does that mean? I mean, there's so many details that we don't know, and we need to know them. Otherwise, I have no idea how this ends. I'll tell you Tuesday, but I don't know today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ohannes. Thank you, Deborah. So we'll start taking the questions from the audience. You can write them on the chat. We have a question from Dr. Nahla Yassin Hamdan. Dr. Nahla's question is, if the Biden administration is avoiding a full-scale regional war, why they did not agree or are ignoring an immediate ceasefire?
Oh, here's what they said, and you can take this as you wish, that a ceasefire with no hostage release they felt it wasn't a good idea. That's what they wanted to be included. And, you know, part of how that works at the UN is also to push the United States. I mean, it's a cost domestically in some ways every time they vote no. I have been listening to interview after interview out of Michigan, and Arab Americans are like, no, we are not voting for this guy. Yeah, we put him over the finish line the last time in Michigan, but we're out. We can't. And then there's other voices who say, well, we want to get their attention. You know, we will be the ones who will pay the price for a Trump administration. We already know how he feels about Muslims. We get that, but we want to say something so strong that the Biden administration understands that they will lose our votes if they don't change this policy. So I don't know. Are they thinking about it? Are they playing electoral politics? We are getting closer and closer to November. It's going to matter more and more. I don't know what their calculations are. I can see publicly what they are in Michigan.
Okay, I'll go to the next question. Nicolas Lotito, with the IDF preparing for a ground invasion of Rafah, there has been increased discussion of Gazans being displaced into Egypt. While Egypt strongly opposes this idea, the government appears to be preparing emergency accommodation for at least some number of Palestinian refugees should they cross the border. First, what are your thoughts on the ideas of displacing Palestinians into Egyptian territory and the Egyptian government's effort to prevent this? And the second question is, considering Lebanon history with displaced Palestinians as well as Syrians, what is the view of the situation from Lebanon?
Egypt has been
Yes,
Egypt
please
has
go.
Egypt has been against such displacement. Egypt and Jordan have been against such displacement. But what may happen? I mean, the attack on Rafah will take place whether there is a ceasefire or there is no ceasefire. This is what Netanyahu is saying. This is what the Israeli War Cabinet is saying. Otherwise, their perspective is that if they don't wage an attack on Rafah, Hamas will not be destroyed. This is their perspective, what they say. Concerning, certainly there will be a humanitarian crisis, more refugees. Egypt is not in favor of such displacement, because if that happens, it could be, I don't know, I mean, it could be the end of talk about the Palestinian state. The United States, just to add one more thing on the question in the previous question, the United States, France, Britain, the West in general, are in favor of two-state solution. There is no other solution to this conflict. Displacement is not a solution. We have seen the consequences of displacement in Lebanon, the refugees in Lebanon. I mean, returning to Palestine is still on the agenda. So with more refugees and more displacement, this conflict will not be solved. The solution is not by increasing the number of refugees and displacement and causing displacement. That's not the solution. It will not bring a solution. So Israel is mistaken also in this context. And certainly Israel is committing violations by attacking, I mean, civilians. It has violated the rules of war. I mean, committing violence against civilians. That's another issue. There is no time to talk about it. But certainly Egypt and Jordan are aware, and therefore increasing the number of refugees will not bring a solution. Displacement will not bring a solution. King Abdullah of Jordan has visited President Biden in Washington, and he was very clear on that issue. So to exert more pressure on the Israeli side, so that, I mean, Israel complies, but so far we don't have good signals, positive, optimistic, actually, positions from the Israeli side.
So it doesn't matter what I think about displacement, but it does matter how it is viewed in the Arab world. It's clear to me that the Egyptians built that camp, and they have. But it's a walled camp, just in case. My question has been, it is not out of the question that if things get really terrible in Rafah, if 1 million people rush the gate, I think Egypt wants a place to put them. They do not want them all over the Sinai. That's a security problem for them anyway. But my bigger question is, what do the other Arab capitals do if they are faced with television pictures of what will look like Nakba 2.0? I mean, politically, you can't sell that at home. You just cannot. It is so sensitive for Arab populations to see that again. At the moment, the Israelis allow the Jordanians and the Turks and the UAE to not only have hospital ships outside of Gaza, but they've done some humanitarian airdrops. That's all been coordinated through the Israelis, and you know, there's back channels between those governments and the Israel. Does that all evaporate if 1 million Palestinians, you know, run out of Rafah and end up in Egypt? I don't know, but it's been on my mind about how the region perceives that if it happens. I mean, in the same way as we talked about Lebanon, accidents happen, I feel the same thing could happen in the South. I've not heard a credible plan for what to do with everybody. All the aid agencies are saying we can't do what you're talking about. And so if the bombing starts and people are desperate and hungry and they've been through this for how many days now, I think that there could be a breakthrough in Rafah and people start streaming into the Sinai. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like.
There's a question from Hannah Taylor. I would like to ask you more about popular views of the war. Do you have the sense that support of escalation breaks down clearly along sectarian lines, other than the costs of the war destruction that Lebanon cannot afford and sympathy for the Palestinians? How else are people thinking about a possible war?
Ohannes, this is all you. I have no idea. I'm not talking to anybody on the street.
By the way, I mean, as I said a while ago, possible war. War cannot be, we cannot rule it out. As I said a while ago, how they have been thinking about it, they are afraid, to tell you the truth. The Lebanese are afraid, particularly, I mean, all the Lebanese are afraid because a possible war, potential escalation is there. But a possible war would bring destruction not only to Hezbollah, but will bring destruction to Lebanon. And I cannot imagine how this country would be able to stand on its feet once again in light of no Gulf support in future rebuilding of the destroyed zones or areas, infrastructure, bridges. A country with no electricity, I mean, how could we imagine what could be the consequences could be disastrous, by the way. And all the Lebanese are worried, irrespective of sectarian belonging. On this issue, all of them are worried because everything will be destroyed, given the state failure. State failure. A while ago, Amani actually put the finger on the right place. Actually, indicated something that we should not ignore. We have a failed state in Lebanon. The state is failed. When the state is unable to provide medical care, health care, electricity, infrastructure, education, security, which is the primary political good, what are we talking about? Then complete failure. So yes, the unfortunate thing in all this is that the decision of war is taken by a non-state actor, which is contrary to the definition of the Westphalian conception of the state, the monopoly of violence. This is the main point of disagreement in the country today. What Amani said a while ago, I agree fully.
So, Ohannes, I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I want to follow up with a little bit of a provocative question, if I may. I often hear this, and so this is in like real-time discussion. Why should the Gulf have to rebuild Lebanon when it was trying to engage in normalization talks with Israel and to come clean up the mess of, and this is what I hear, why should they clean up the mess of Hezbollah or even Hamas?
Right, you are right. Actually, the Gulf, I mean, we read about the huge financial support to Egypt 2 days ago. Billions of dollars, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, I mean, to Egypt, so that Egypt, to rescue Egypt from further economic collapse, poverty, unemployment, whatever, which is in the right direction. I mean, Egypt is not certainly Egypt doesn't want war. Egypt has its own problems. Yes, I fully agree with you. Why the Gulf should support? I mean, there is no reason. There is no reason. The Gulf is investing elsewhere, in Egypt, elsewhere. Because, I mean, that's because keeping people in poverty and unemployment will not, and not providing the political goods. I'm talking about Egypt, for example. The same applies to Lebanon and to other societies. Certainly, unemployment, poverty, so on and so forth, I mean, will bring further conflict and problems to societies. So the UAE is investing in the right place. Yes, I fully agree with you. Why the Gulf is, for example, why the Gulf should invest in Lebanon by providing money to rebuild the destroyed infrastructure, for example, in case the war happens. I fully agree with you. Saudi Arabia has been very clear. We will recognize Israel provided that Israel accepts the two-state solution. Violence will not bring solution to the Palestinian conflict. Let us be very clear on this issue. Israel, I mean, Netanyahu government, the extremists taking part in the Netanyahu government, he is one of them. That's not the solution to this conflict. It will cause more violence and more hatred, and a cycle of violence will bring another cycle of violence. So that's not the right approach to solve this problem. I fully agree with the two-state solution. There is no other solution to this conflict.
Two things. Lebanon's already suffering from the war in Gaza. The tourist sector is way down. Foreign investments also down. All of that is due to uncertainty. So that has already started. And just a word about the two-state solution. I mean, I think that the problem that the Biden administration is having is Benjamin Netanyahu is in government because of the support of Ben-Gvir and Mr. Shmulitz. I mean, the extreme part of his coalition, and they do not want a Palestinian state. And for him to politically survive, he cannot have them walk out of the government, because in an election, he will lose. I think his polls are somewhere around 17%. There's no way he can win in an election. So to stay in power, he is moving in the direction of the ultra right-wing members of his cabinet, who want to stop all aid to Gaza, want to starve the PA and hold all their tax money back and not give it to them. And, you know, he's been very vocal about this American idea, the US idea, that we would unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. They're freaking out about that. So I don't know. There's so many big roadblocks to moving this forward. But I had one more question for Ohannes, and that is, I had read that Saad Hariri was back in Lebanon, and I wondered what that was the sign of. He has been prime minister. He is seen as, I guess, the leader. I don't know if he still is the leader of the Sunni population. What is he doing there? Is that a sign of anything?
No, he made it very clear, by the way. He visited to commemorate the anniversary of his father, and when he was asked about his return to politics, he was very clear. This is not the right time to return, he said. Yes, he will not return because he can do nothing, even if he returns. The causes of that actually led him to leave are still the same. The other thing that he expressed actually to the visitors who visited him in his house, he was also very clear. The future movement will not be engaged in politics, but the future movement, his party, the Mustaqbal, but the future movement will do, I mean, much more better things to Lebanon in the near future. What he meant by much more better things, I don't know. I don't know. But certainly he is not returning to politics, and he made it very clear. He returned to the UAE, where he is residing for the time being. But being invited to deliver a speech on the occasion of graduation in Saudi Arabia, I mean, was a signal that probably the Saudis have started to reconsider their position from him, and it's early to confirm whether he will enjoy once again the Saudi backing. It's very early to confirm it, but there are some signals, and probably that's why he said this is not the right time to return.
Thank you. You didn't quite clear it up, but you sure added more meat to the bones of what I saw. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
So I think we still have 5 minutes. There are 3 questions that are interrelated, so I'll ask them together. Yasmina is asking, surveys conducted in Lebanon after October 7 suggest more support for Hezbollah, though the sectarian divide is still strong. Does this have the potential to impact behavior at the leadership level? Does domestic opinion matter here? As a follow-up, Sarah Abu Saeed asks, some Lebanese feel pride and some others feel resentment towards the involvement of Hezbollah in the war. How do you see that affecting Lebanese internal politics, and how do we recover from this? And Amal Karaki question is, why do we need a revised 1701 when the original resolution was not implemented in its entirety?
All right. The sectarian tension has been there for a long time, even before the October 7 actually Gaza war. It has been there. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it becomes more tense, but it is there. I mean, for the time being, there is a big number of Lebanese. I mean, we don't have statistics so that we talk in percentages. But I can tell you that a big number of Lebanese, as we said a while ago, are against the war. What is taking place now in Lebanon will certainly, hopefully there is a ceasefire, and hopefully this escalation ends and no more fighting in Gaza and Lebanon. Hopefully this happens, right? But let's not be very optimistic. I mean, there is a lot of uncertainty. You never know what will happen. But certainly, no matter what happens, what Hezbollah has done will leave a negative impact on the Lebanese society, without referring to sectarian belonging. It will, and also it will leave an impact on politics concerning presidential elections, formation of government. Tanya, this system has failed. The big question is, as it is being said for Gaza, the day after, right? But I would like to raise the question, and probably I would like Deb would like to comment. What about the day after for Lebanon? What about the day after for Lebanon concerning presidential elections, cabinet, the political system as a whole? There are big questions now being raised. Thank you.
And I certainly would not be the one to answer them, but I think, Ohannes, you've been great in doing the details of what's happening in Lebanon, and I cannot add a better thing to everything that you've said.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Ohannes. We have 2 more minutes. So final remarks, Amani, Ohannes, and Deborah.
So I'll defer to my colleagues. I want to say this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. It's exactly what we wanted to capture, the view from the region, from the ground. And I know, Deb, you haven't been on the ground in Lebanon, but you spend a lot of time talking to a lot of different people. And so we really appreciate your insights. And Ohannes, your insights have been also spectacular this morning. So I'm going to turn it to Deb and then Ohannes for the last words. And then Tanya, thank you as well.
So in some ways, I am happy that I was in Gaza, not in Gaza, but I was covering Israel in 2021 at the end of the last war in Gaza. My colleague was exhausted and I was doing vacation relief. So I have a little bit more, sense of it because there's many of the things the same lot that's different. I read it as obsessively as I ever did. When I was working as a journalist. But I have to say, I don't remember a time that has been as grim as this. I can't project. I don't know how this ends. I really don't. The moving parts are huge. But the only thing that I sometimes hold on to is, October 6th was as good as it's been in the region. The Abraham Accords kind of worked. The Saudis looked like they were coming on board. It was really something. And I know that the Biden administration is trying to get back there. I think behind the scenes, there's the ceasefire talks, but there's also this wider plan, the deal that the Biden administration they're trying to get back to October 6th and see if that is a framework for a 2-state solution. Maybe. Historically, I don't know, I've been doing this for a long time and boy, things often don't work out, but I'm trying to keep my pessimism, because there is no other solution. You can't be an occupying power till the end of time. It just doesn't work. And so let us hope that reason prevails this time.
All right. Thank you very much. It has been great to discuss the situation in Lebanon with you. Amani, thank you very much. Christy, Tanya, Deb, Lara, all of you. This has been a great moment to exchange ideas and express our academic views concerning the conflict in Gaza, Lebanon, because they are related to each other. Hezbollah is very clear. I forgot to say this in my remarks a while ago. If the war does not stop in Gaza, we are not interested in negotiations in Lebanon. So let nobody talk to us about negotiations, about the 1701, if the war does not, if there is no ceasefire in Gaza. So both conflicts are related, interrelated. I mean, I forgot to emphasize this. There were lost opportunities to make peace since Oslo. I mean, however, there was no willingness to create a Palestinian state. I mean, this position reveals itself once again with Netanyahu and his government. They are not willing to discuss it. They are against it. And the thing is that if there is no Palestinian state being created, I mean, which is the right of the Palestinians, by the way, so that this conflict ends once and for all, because this is not a situation that could continue for decades and decades. Since 1948, it has been dragging on and on and on. And I have read Kissinger's actually answers to Martin Indyk, who interviewed him, the recent book that was published. I mean, I knew some of the content, but I was shocked when Kissinger was very frank, and he said, we were negotiating not to solve the Palestinian conflict. We were negotiating just to delay, and delay and delay. So there was no willingness. This is what I said a while ago. If the US is really willing and it wants to push forward for the two-state solution, that is very good, because that is the solution to this conflict. Otherwise, unfortunately, we're going to witness another round of violence after a period of time, and it becomes endless. Thank
But
you
time
very
is
much.
short. Time is short. We have an election coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ohannes. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Amani, Lara, and Christy. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending our conversations from Beirut. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.